You spent countless hours in the garage with your dad. Now, investing in that old car and working on it with your son reminds you of him. And his legacy lives on. Fund your passion with a low-interest home equity line of credit from Bank of Blue Valley.
Voice that commercial has. Chris, how are you doing today? You doing good, Chris?
That commercial has a great ring to it. Thanks for doing great. Thanks for having us today, Scott.
That's right. Now, with today's show, we always have everyone tune in and tell us where they're listening from. Sometimes we get some jokes of people dialing up on dial-up internet, but we always want to tell them. Usually we do this on a Tuesday, so we'll probably be people picking up. But when you have the guest that we have here, you got to make it. You got to make it work. And he's been so generous with his time. But tell me about your weekend. Did you have a good weekend? Did you watch some good football games?
What a weekend. A weekend of winning. Chiefs turning it around in Germany. And then, of course, the Sporting Kansas City game last night. Love to see Sporting knock off the number 1 seed of St. Louis. Feels great on this Monday afternoon.
Absolutely. Everything is just like, there's not a reason not to be just super happy. And a lot of that is because of our sponsors at Bank of Blue Valley and Burns McDonnell, which you're going to get a chance today to ask a question that you're really passionate about in financial literacy. So you pumped up?
Pumped up. It's great to be here, and thank you for having us, Scott. I've got to say, I just joined Bank of Blue Valley a few months ago as head of commercial banking, leading a team of bankers providing financial solutions to middle market businesses. And I just think it's what we do is as we recruit the next generation of bankers and leaders, we are financial literacy is a big piece of what we offer to our clients. So excited to talk about that.
Yeah, I love it. So this show is very, very off the cuff. A lot of times we have 4 people that have never met each other. And so you're sitting here, you're like, wait, I'm about to host a show and I'm hosting it with Peter Mallouk as our guest, which we'll be entering in right now. Peter. And there he is coming up.
I gotta say, best podcast intro music I've heard in a long time.
Yeah.
Before we went to the commercial, I mean, you could have got another couple minutes of that. Very, very good.
Oh, just relaxes you. It calms it down. So when I was talking to Chris in the pre-show, I was like, Peter does this for a living, speaking to tens of thousands of people and sometimes hundreds of thousands. It's like, no matter what, you'll get us into a really good intro and transition the show because you're such a pro. But as we transition for the audience, it's going to tune in and let us know where they're watching from. Peter, I'm going to do my best Aaron Fulk impression I doubt anyone doesn't know you. But for those who don't, who are you? What do you do? And how do you make your way to Kansas City?
I'm the president of Creative Planning. We provide wealth management services, retirement, tax, investments, financial planning to everyday people, very, very affluent families, and foundations and 401k plans. Those are our primary practices, but we also will prepare 30,000 tax returns this year, several thousand estate plans, very simple to very complex. How I got to Kansas City was super easy. I was born here. Just never. The furthest I ever got was KU. The one game left out this weekend was the Jayhawks, underdogs, winning on the road with their backup quarterback. So great weekend all around. Chiefs, Jayhawks, and Sporting.
That's right. And so, Peter, a lot of people always say, I knew Peter when. And I know Chris has a question following up, but just a little bit more of the origin story of how you built one of the most notorious companies in Kansas City. today, I mean, it didn't start from you just buying a big company. You grew it from the grassroots up. So tell the audience how the origin story of your company started.
Notorious is a very interesting word. I'll take
I
it.
was going to
I'll
say
take it.
the better word would be iconic.
No, I thought notorious was great. It sounded very. Anyway, it was that was good. I liked it. The origin story is pretty straightforward. I was just doing a lot of things for other people. I had been a state attorney and still am, but practicing, and a certified financial planner and investment manager. And I would go in and I would plug in that service for other advisors. So if an advisor wanted to give their clients tax advice or legal advice or planning advice, I would go in and do that for them. And after 6 years of that, light bulb finally went off that people really want this in one place. We became the first firm in the country to start to put these together and get to scale. And so I think there was just a lot of demand for it. People are, it's confusing, and so I really tried to have a system that my mom, a teacher, my dad, a doctor, would be able to say, hey, I understand this. You can build a plan for me, help me pick my investments, help me with tax and legal questions, do other things for me if I need it, and make it in a way that was actionable and easy to understand. And that was kind of the beginning of Creative. And really that story hasn't changed. It's just gotten more advanced and a lot more breadth, a lot more depth in terms of the services and the offering and the investment platform. But same story today, almost 20 years later. I mean, we're about 7 weeks away from 20 years.
Wow. Yeah, Chris, I'm about to toss off to you, but I tell people all the time, you speak to a group called Top Gun Kansas City, and we always say that you're not a millennial unless you have your will and trust at Creative. So you guys are the generation in Kansas City. Chris, what do you have to say here? What questions you got?
Well, I just think it's so interesting, Peter, with your knowledge of the markets and the advice that you're providing your clients. One thing that we're talking to our customers about on a daily basis is the resilience that our customers have had over, the pandemic and 2022, but into 2023, where those challenges have spilled over. I mean, we talk about it every day. The continued supply chain disruptions, inflation, the interest rate environment, labor shortages, rising labor costs. I mean, it's just incredible how resilient the American business owners have been and shown themselves to be. And I just curious from your standpoint and from what you're seeing in the market, what your sentiment is regarding the economy going into 2024, and whether or not business owners, if you think they should be ready to carry that same resilience into next year.
Well, it's interesting. I agree. Business owners have been very resilient, but they really haven't had a lot to be resilient from. I'm just saying this as a business owner. I think that what we have here is much worse than people think it is today, and is probably going to be much better than people anticipate it will be a year or two down the road. I think if you look at with COVID, everyone's inside, everyone's trapped. The Federal Reserve lowers interest rates, Congress gives everybody a bunch of money. And of course, the price of everything goes up. And so we have very high inflation. Everybody freaks out. Federal Reserve says, well, we can't have that because if there's high inflation, everyone will just buy everything around them thinking it's going to go up in value. And so I'll buy 10 homes because I know they all go up in value and then I'll sell them later. So they raise rates, we pull money out of the system, and we start to control inflation. Well, if you look today, if inflation's under control, when you look at things like buying a refrigerator or a car, car prices are coming down, refrigerators are coming down, things like that. So the headline number for inflation looks like it's under control. Well, you saw these business owners tend to be in that, top 25% of Americans. Those are people that own stocks and they own real estate. Well, those things are way, way up from where they were before COVID because inflation drove them all up. Now they've controlled inflation, but the issue is there are three things that are still out of control: shelter, food, and oil. Well, that's most Americans, right? So most Americans are still getting absolutely crushed. They're not the people writing the stories in the magazines. They're not the anchors on TV. They're not the business owners. They're getting crushed. And I think that their story isn't really out there. We really had a recovery that benefited one group but not the other. And there are also a lot of consumers there. So today we see a lot of weakness because all they can do is spend their money on food and getting to work and back. They don't have a lot of discretionary income. We're seeing that go away. We're seeing credit card balances go up. But I do think that when we get a year or two out, those prices are finally going to come down, hopefully in a matter of quarters and not a couple of years. The issue is the Federal Reserve can't do anything about it. They can't control oil prices. That has to do with what's going on in Ukraine and the Middle East and everything else, as you know. So it's now there are a lot of people suffering that are lost in all of this. And I think we're going to see that group see some relief here on the back end, and then we'll see the economy really come back strong when that happens.
Peter, we have a lot of business owners that watch this show, and everyone is always trying to figure out what that happy medium is from work from home. Do you have any philosophy on how you feel that's going to change the economy, or advice for business owners about bringing people in the office, or what they should do on the hybrid level?
Well, I think it's very specific to what a company is doing. So like if you look at creative planning before COVID, we have wealth managers all over the United States. We had at one point, I think 6 years ago, one office outside of Kansas City. Now everyone's going home, and today we have 70 offices. There's a lot to do with what's going on. I mean, the research is in that everyone, if you put them in one big pot together, are more productive in the office. But we still don't have that policy nationwide at creative planning. I mean, you have to look at how self-incented are your people? Is their compensation tied to what activities they have that contribute to the company? And if it is, and you have that alignment, then it's then that group of people you're more likely to be flexible with than a group that isn't tied to that. I really think you have to look at your workforce and see where it's going. If you look at the field I'm in, financial services, I mean, JP Morgan, they're all saying, come back, you're coming back to work, right? Everybody's seeing that shift. I think the work from home part really came about because employers had no leverage at all, right? When unemployment was down near 3.4, 3.5%, you couldn't hire anybody. You basically were like, look, if you're in Alaska and you're several time zones away and you want to work from home, fine, because I need somebody to do that. We're starting to see a little bit of a softening in the employment market, and you're seeing some companies change back based on that. My attitude has always been to ignore what's going on with all of that and look at each role and say, where does that role thrive? I mean, there are a lot of people that you need them to collaborate to succeed. And there's a lot of people that are really kind of running their own show within your organization. And I think the way you approach each of those should be different and unique.
Chris, I'm going to ask
speaking of,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to jump in with a follow-up. Speaking of office and culture, I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't congratulate creative planning on being recognized by the Business Journal as the best place to work in 2023. So huge congrats there. And I'm just curious, what motivates your team members? How do you keep them engaged? Why that outcome? Is it work-life balance? Is it perks? Is it philanthropy? What do you chalk that up to?
Well, I think it's like a cake. You have to have all the different ingredients. And I think, of all the awards that you can get, to me, that is one of the most important ones that we get really, truly excited about here, because there is such a big, intentional, conscientious effort to make this the best place for clients and the best place for the team. And I think there's a lot of things. There's a path to partnership. There's 400 or 500 partners at Creative Planning and growing rapidly. We compensate well. We try to be flexible in a lot of different ways. We don't care what role you're in at Creative Planning. We don't want you to miss the spelling bee or the dance competition or the soccer tournament. We're very family supportive. We have all kinds of events at our headquarters and all over the country. When we have annual meeting, the people get together. When the firm hits a goal, every single person in every single role everywhere in the company goes on a trip that include international options. And we do a lot of charitable things. We're very involved in the community. But I think all of this has to go together because different people are motivated by different things. You can't say, if we do this, everyone's going to be happy. Some people are motivated by compensation. Some people are motivated by a sense of community and a sense of belonging. Some want flexibility. Some want to work with a team. So the extent you can meet people where they are, you've got a better chance of making it a good place. But to commend the leaders at Creative Planning, because I mean, this is called Drinks with Leaders. I think people quit bosses, right? They really don't quit jobs. They usually, the number one reason is they quit their boss. And so I think a lot of our leaders here, it's a very player coach environment, and every group has a leader that I think has the respect of their team. And I think that's probably the biggest differentiator of them all.
Chris, I know you're going to have a question later, a little bit about the work that you guys both do in the community, but Peter, I'm sure you get this all the time, but I just want to ask, just in case, is you have such an amazing mind to remember people and make everyone feel special. And I know that plays a role in being one of the best places to work. is there anything that you practice to be able to do that? Is it experience? Is it just the love of meeting new people? How do you have that gift of being able to remember everyone?
I appreciate that. I think part of it is you have to love meeting people, right? And I know I can say I don't think I've ever met anybody as good as you. So the fact that you're saying that is
I don't know about that.
pretty high praise. But I think you first of all, you got to just love meeting people. I think that's a big part of it. And then I think that first encounter, you be as engaged as possible, and that's what makes it memorable. And I think it makes it easier. And I think I get creative. I meet every employee before they come on board, in person or on Zoom. So I'm seeing them, I'm getting to talk to them, and it really helps. And so you're starting out at a good spot and build from there and try to develop real connectivity with people.
Well, for the audience, I know, Chris, I know you're going to give a toss area, but for the audience, how many people work at your company? Because you do this with everyone. So the audience knows that it's not a small number.
We're approaching 2,400 now. We've got a lot of people on the team.
Yeah. And you meet everyone. All right, Chris, what do you have to say here?
Well, I think it's I commend your philanthropy, and I just see ways that creative planning gives back to the community, all the time. And so we, Kansas City community thanks you for that. And I just, one area that I think we have in common as a bank and an RIA is this point on financial literacy. And Peter, I'm one of your admiring followers on social media, and I slam the like button on your tweets all the time. Can we still call them tweets? And I think something stuck with me that you wrote close to a year ago about how much better the world would be if every high school student had to take just one credit hour on personal financial education. Mm-hmm. You talked about healthy relationships as well. I'm just curious if you could share more about that, and what you see and as the challenge and the opportunity around financial literacy.
I mean, I think if you look at the number one thing that people worry about that are over 50 when they're laying in bed at night is money. The number two thing people between the ages of 30 and 50 worry about is money. The first one's outside the topic of this Zoom, but I think people are very concerned about money. So we go spend all this time learning all the stuff we need to find a profession to make money, or you go to a trade school to make money, or you go to high school and graduate or join the military or whatever to make money and find that path. And no one stops and has you take a credit hour on how to deal with people. Some people are naturally gifted at that, but most people are not, or 1 credit hour on how to balance a checkbook. Or, we taught all of that to our kids because they didn't learn any of it in school, and they're going to pretty good schools. You know what I mean? They're going to good schools. Yeah. So now sometimes it's an elective in high school, but that's not enough. I think we should really look at, empowering people. We're involved with, I know as your organization is in a lot of things. And one of the things we built was called a Pathway Education Center on 18th and Vine, which provides training to teenagers and young adults that are trying to learn the basics of finance, to business owners that are trying to learn the basics, and to adults on how to run their households and balance a budget. And this is all for economically challenged, communities. But they shouldn't have to learn it that way, right? They should be learning it very, very early on, because unfortunately the way people learn it is they get into trouble. And even college grads, the number one thing that they get into trouble with is debt. That's the number one problem that they have in proceeding with life, is they find themselves in a debt spiral very quickly. And reverse compounding, as you know, works just as compounding when it comes to investing. And so much of this is very basic. It doesn't take a lot of time to teach, but it really should just be a mandatory part of getting people in a good spot in the world. And you know what? The United States would be better for it, because when people break down, they wind up in the safety net that we should have as Americans, but they wind up there. We don't need to have as many people there if we did the right things to educate them from not winding up in trouble in the first place.
What were some of the lessons you've learned in putting this together?
I could not agree more. I think it's sorry.
No, Chris, go ahead. I was going to ask the same thing you were. Go ahead. I was going to ask, I think Chris was going to ask the same thing. It's kind of like just the lessons learned, when you go into this, you've more of like, what hurdles are there that the rest of society wouldn't know about?
I mean, what hurdles are there for people that are just trying to run a house?
To put on this education process, have you been welcomed with open arms in terms of putting up? Or there been certain hurdles?
I
Like,
see.
why is it not doing more?
Well, I think the thing, no, I mean, like there's open arms all over the place. Like Kansas City's, we started in Kansas City. We're going national with it now. And Kansas City politicians were welcoming. The community was welcoming. The issue is you've got to go reach the end person, right? And the end person is busy, right? They've got a million things coming at them in a million different ways. And they're going to stop and get on a Zoom and listen for an hour, or show up at your office and listen for an hour. We're hitting thousands of people. That's wonderful. But a public school system and a private school system would hit every single person, right? While they're sitting in a classroom at the age ready to learn and learning from a place of strength instead of trying to dig out of something. And so it's wonderful. I mean, the community's been great. The people volunteering their time at creative planning, and a lot of our competitors, we've been bringing in the community, and other people are coming in and helping educate. The response has been incredible. The issue is the reach. It needs to be in the school system instead of trying to help people after they're learning lessons the hard way.
Chris, go ahead. I didn't mean I interrupted you earlier.
No, and my apologies. I'm on a slight delay, so we cut each other off there. No, I was just going to say I agree completely with the philosophy, and it's just admirable, how you're proactively addressing it.
The question I have that is always exciting as we're getting closer to the end of the show. We may have a chance for one or two more questions. What are the exciting things in the economy that get you really jazzed about what people can look forward to with innovation going on?
Well, I think if you look at what drives economies, it's innovation, it's technology, it's demographics. So we can get caught up in the noise, like what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in the Middle East, what happens with potential cyber attacks, what's going on with Republicans and Democrats and presidents and congressmen, and all the chaos that's happening in our daily lives that may or may not impact the markets and the economy over the long run. But in the very long run, all that matters is that there's innovation and technology, and there's people to buy stuff. And we have 1.2 billion people coming out of poverty in the next decade. They're going to buy stuff. They're going to buy Nike shoes. They're going to go to McDonald's. They're going to go to Walmart. They want their iPhones. They're going to buy stuff in a way we've never seen before. This is more people coming out of poverty than any decade in history. And you combine that not just with innovation and technology, but an acceleration of innovation and technology that will blow all of our minds 10 years from now. We look at the advancements that are going to happen in the biosciences and healthcare with AI. It's people's minds will be blown. And this will make, anytime you look at periods of history like this, it's coupled with massive economic growth. And so all we got to do is not go out of our way to completely screw it up, which, listen, Congress and the presidents, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. They are doing all they can to screw it up, right? We have to have some control of the debt, but outside of like that, a total debacle, it's very hard to not be optimistic over the next 10 years.
Chris, question for you and your bank. How do you guys look at what is going to go on over the next 5-10 years? Are you guys excited? Are you bullish?
Extremely so. I might share a little example. We, Bank of Blue Valley, hosted a roundtable about a month ago with the Business Journal to discuss the pros and cons of AI. And the guests at that roundtable were top private companies in Kansas City. And I think it was just interesting to see, regardless of the company's size or industry, that AI is going to bring efficiency and scale to these businesses. And it's difficult to forecast the specifics, but a few things were clear: that it was going to change operations and jobs and customer experience. And at the end of the day, as a bank, that's what we are all about, is customer service. I mean, that's how we compete. Rates and products are, fairly similar from bank to bank, or, a week or two behind one another. But for us, it's all about the customer experience. And so I think, we're going to see, a lot of changes and improvements to how we do business. So, and again, I'm hearing that echoed from many other businesses as well. So it's just getting started. And we know interesting too, ChatGPT, I think, is an iteration of something that's been evolving for over 50 years. And now we're going to see it explode. But to Peter's point, we have to have some guardrails around it. And, it's not without risk. We don't know what the unintended consequences are yet. So we've got to I think, a low risk use case to test before we unleash it all.
The question I have, Peter, is what about how AI is going to affect your industry, or is it something where, how are you even approaching that topic?
Well, I think what you might originally need, so we can only begin to imagine, but some obvious things, you might need a huge group of analysts to say, hey, I want these 27 criteria and I want you to go find things that fit that. And you're going to get that in 3 seconds from a machine, right? There's just going to be so many things that allow things to become more efficient. I look at it like the internet. Before the internet, everything was, very manual. It took a long time to research things. You're doing everything in Excel and everything else. Now you've got all this information coming at you at real time. You've got all kinds of software tools. And so what used to take 3 people to do something, it now takes 1 person to do something, but that person gets paid more. So when we look at advancements, we're more advanced now than we've ever been in history, and our unemployment rate is lower now than it's ever been in history. So you get these advancements, what it usually does is create more higher income jobs for people, as this replaces a lot of different roles across a lot of different professions.
Well, we have a lot of people responding to the comments as well, which we'll get to here shortly. We have Robin that says, love listening to you all. Thank you both for the supporting the Jewish Community Center, which is good. And then question, as we'll end on, any forecast by Jay, any forecast for rural healthcare, especially those of us that are cultivating niche markets rather than chasing competitors?
Well, Jonay, I wish I could help you. I know nothing about the rural healthcare market, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be the person that can shed any light on that.
So I always have Aaron host, and then Chris is hosting with us for the first time. So I was going to ask Chris. So I'm dyslexic. So my greatest fear in the world is reading things off the cuff. And I'm just really happy there wasn't any tricky letters there that made me look not that good at reading out loud on a podcast.
So to really quickly answer the question, I did read it. And I would just say community banks make up 60% of small business loans, and typically 80% of rural communities. And the banks are out there. There's and I think willing to invest in those hospitals. I couldn't speak for the hospital providers themselves, but we see a lot of projects like that.
So Peter, we're going to end this on a nice final fun note. Is what are your goals as we're getting close to the end of 2023? I know we can't think that far in advance, but nothing huge. But are there a couple goals you have for creative planning in 2024 that you want to share with the audience?
Well, I think we've got for the first time in our history, we always keep a whiteboard of all the services we want for our clients and all of the key roles that we want to have, and all of that stuff's done. We kind of don't know what to do with ourselves. So we're really focusing on being better at every single thing we do. And that's been permeating through the whole organization. We talked about launching that kind of very big push on January 1. And we're like, well, why would we do that? Let's just get going on that now. So that's been our focus in everything we do, is what can we do better for the client? Because we know, if we take care of the client, they stay with us and they refer to us, and that's how we win too. So that's the mindset we've got. It's, it's always been like, how do we add these services for them? And I think we're serviced out. We've got everything that I think we want to be in, and it's really just getting as good as we can possibly be at it.
Well, I mean, I can't thank you enough. Also knowing that when you're talking about like, hey, you're thinking about what else you're going to do. When they reached out and they said, hey, we'd love it if we get Peter Mallouk on the show. We're like, oh my gosh, he has so many things going on. But, I kind of like it that, you're at a point where you're like, how can I help my clients even more? And that's always been the focus. And then Chris, I thought that was a really great thing for you to bring up, winning the best places to work in all of Kansas City. Just such a big deal. And we just can't thank Bank of Blue Valley and Burns McDonnell for allowing us to do this. Peter, I know you get hundreds of requests. That's very, very nice of you. I know when talking about how you make people feel, I know you always make Erin, who runs the show, Fulk, very, very happy every time that she sees you, and you make everyone in Kansas City feel special. So thank you so much. And we're going to wrap up, and eventually Erin's going to say, we're not live anymore, but we're going to wave at the camera and the audience. So then she ends the show. So, all right. Well, thank you,
All
Chris.
right.
Thank
Good
you,
to see you.
Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Take care.